just when you thought it was safe to go onto iTunes. This is Next Level Guy, the only website that makes self-development as fun as going to the movies. It's time to take the red pill and escape the Matrix.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Next Level Guy Show podcast. Today's guest is someone who I've been wanting to interview for quite a while now, Hayley Quinn. Hayley is one of the best dating coaches around, and as she says, she likes to teach men and women a new approach to love which emphasises personal responsibility, action, empathy and a belief that you can design the life that you want to lead. So if you want to improve your social life, your dating and your pickup skills, this is the interview for you. Enjoy. But first, a quick word about our affiliates. Next Level Guy is in partnership with some awesome companies. To see the latest deals, special offers and listener exclusives, please go to www.nextlevelguy.com/affiliates. That's www.nextlevelguy.com/affiliates. And now to the interview with Hayley. Well, thank you very much for taking the time to speak to me. If you had 30 seconds between floors in a lift, how would you describe who you are and what you did?
Well, I would say I'm going to go right in there and say I'm a feminist pickup artist. So I teach philosophy on love, which is kind of a fusion from my years of training and living and working for men in the pickup industry, kind of with the female empowerment ethos that I believe in. So I actually teach men and women to connect better through a really interesting hybrid system of creating attraction.
Well, that's something I wanted to speak to you about, was you were actually making pickup feasible, it was workable for the modern man. Can you go into a little bit about how you got into this kind of dating experience? Did you have sex when you were younger? And how did you get into pickup and coaching guys?
Yeah, I mean, the whole thing was a strange experience. I definitely didn't intend to be a dating guru. In fact, my younger self would probably have found that hilarious because I was really dorky in school. And when I was at university, I was reading a lot about feminism, psychoanalysis, gender. So I was really more into feminism. And then by sort of chance and a weird, bad dating experience, I came across the pickup artist industry. And I actually, at the beginning, I was really offended by it. And I thought, what is this horrible stuff that's teaching men how to have more sex with women? Ugh, like that doesn't feel ethical. It doesn't feel nice. It sounds manipulative. So I had a pretty standard reaction to the industry. But I'm always like quite adventurous and quite curious. So of course I reached out to some of the pickup gurus from the book The Game on Twitter, and Twitter had just begun then, so they were quite accessible. Got into some conversations with them, and I'm sure partly to do with the fact I was a really young woman at the time, we got into a dialogue, and my first gig as a writer, which is what I always wanted to be, was just ghostwriting content for pickup artists, ebooks and blogs, and then through that I started to attend their training events. I started to do a bit of speaking, and then because word got around, because the industry and the scene is still quite small, about this woman who knew about the world of pickup, and so I was then started to be offered coaching jobs for pickup companies, giving like the woman's opinion, and from that I built up my own kind of ideas and my own client base, and then sort of started up my own business. And then I started working with women as well, because I thought there was definitely a way that this could be taught, which embraced the value of learning social skills, but also made it in a way that was kind of like clean and ethical and accessible for, the modern man and also the modern woman.
Because when I got into getting to know you and following you and, seeing your material, I found it strange that you were a feminist as well as into the pickup side of things. And
I can explain that if you want.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Here's my opinion on this, and I've spent years thinking about it. I'm not saying that all pickup is like female friendly. Some of it is definitely misogynistic, and I wouldn't promote it. However, if I look at the female dating industry and market, which I do a lot, I find a lot of the ideas in that are actually less progressive. I think that women being told they shouldn't reply to a guy's message and they should not, not have sex with him until they've known him for ages, and this kind of stuff. This feels like those ideals feel more anti-progress for women's rights. And actually, I think men and women being able to communicate better, and the idea is that, you can learn social skills and it's not just about your physical appearance. And some values and philosophies in the pickup world are more progressive and actually, I think, are more suitable for women as well. So I think there is definitely there is definitely an overlap. It just isn't obvious between the two worlds.
No, that's a great answer. I mean, I've used real social dynamics. I'm not sure if you're aware of them.
Yeah.
I found it a bit kind of, the routines were a bit creepy, but the bit about, building your confidence, being able to be better in social situations, becoming, the changing the mentality towards you being the prize rather than the chaser. Things like that definitely helped my mentality of it. So do you find there's a standard reason a guy comes to speak to you, or is it just depending on their culture, religious background and things like that?
I tend to find maybe the guys that and I guess there is a choice that men are making when they choose to work with me versus a different brand. So they probably want to work with someone who they know that what they're going to be learning is very female friendly. So that it's not anything that's going to be sleazy or creepy. There are also guys that are kind of, all credit to them, who are okay to work and be coached by a woman. And it's not that, so I think they usually have a deep respect for women. And sometimes that respect is so deep, it means that they often struggle to be sexual or to be anything other than just a friend, because usually that's coming from a place where they're just holding back because they really, really want to make the woman feel comfortable. So I try and usually teach these men who are successful, professional, interesting, awesome guys, how they can be, keep their moral value system and stay ethical, but they can also have the sexual experiences that they want and be the man that women are attracted to.
And I think I'd be one of them. That was something I struggled with, was keeping the attitude of all these guys wanting to sleep around, but I just wanted to become better and meet some women and, give them a great experience sexually, physically, dating, etc. I just didn't want to be that creepy guy that just seen them as pieces of meat, which unfortunately there's a lot of great guys in those areas, but so I mean, how? Yeah.
Also, it's it's as a feminist, I would say that obviously not all women want relationships. Some do, and all power to them. They should pursue that. But there's obviously a proportion of women out there at different stages in their life will be open to more casual relationships. I don't think it's about whether you have one sexual partner, 0 sexual partners, or 500 sexual partners. And it doesn't have to be, one doesn't have to be morally better than the other. Mm-hmm. It's about actually making sure you do that in a way that's conscious, that doesn't manipulate anyone, and that you're finding people who want the same things. And there's enough people in the world that you can find people that have the same intentions as you do and want to share those experiences.
So do you think there's a way that you can define masculinity? I mean, if somebody said to you, define what makes up a man, what makes him attractive, how would you define it?
I guess I would also, whenever I answer this, I'm conscious to say, I've got my opinion on this, and hopefully it's quite well informed, but I definitely don't speak on behalf of all women. And I think if there's anything we know about, especially, I guess, how women view things, it's just, there's a huge variety of opinions there. For me, the masculine is associated positively with, protection in a nice way, but not possession. So a guy who you feel safe in his company, that you feel that he respects you. I like guys that are okay to, assert themselves, that have the internal sense of self-esteem, where they command respect, where they have good personal boundaries. And also that they don't just, if you're an attractive woman, that doesn't mean that, that doesn't really make a huge difference to them, that they really meet you on a level as a person, and then you work out if you've got a good connection after that. So I think for guys, usually the process of attraction, and I say process because I think the majority of women, or majority of people, attraction isn't a visual instant thing. It's something that builds up in relation to how you interact with a person and their behaviors. And I think that is to do, what behaviors you find attractive. That's a lot to do with your upbringing and your personal character. Broadly speaking, I think people find people that have strong identities. So guys that, that have a very strong sense of self, are more opinionated, slightly more outgoing, though I think there's ways that you can do that whilst being an introvert as well. Men who are communicative, so who are able to express and articulate what they want with clarity, because I think that gives a woman a lot of security. So I think that's very positive. And also, but men who are strong in their, their sexual intent, like, so that as a woman, where you stand in relation to them. I mean, women I know spend a lot of time worrying or wondering when they meet a man, what his intentions are. So I think for guys who can find that middle ground of being able to be clear about what their sexual intentions are and putting across that information in a way that is respectful, I think that strikes the right note of masculinity that women find super attractive.
That's a superb answer. I was just seeing how many I could tick off myself. That was something I didn't like about the pickup industry was, that they were grading women on a 1 to 10 scale, whereas I was always...
that's just it doesn't help. I'd like to say it doesn't help the guys either, because you know what, like, fundamentally, she's a person, right? She's a person. Mm-hmm. So if you objectify her by giving her a number rating in terms of physical appearance, you actually limit your ability to connect with her and have great conversations, and therefore you become almost handicapped. I would find that the guys who often rate women in terms of physical appearance don't have as good relationships as women. That could mean that they find it harder to speak to women. It could mean that they connect to them less. They don't have rewarding relationships. So I think when you get something like that in the pickup world, as much as it's misogynistic, I also usually find that it stops men from communicating as well with women as they could do, and therefore limits their success.
Definitely. I mean, it was on your previous answer. That was something that I definitely agreed with. I used to only look at it as a yes or no. Do I want to get to know this person more? I tried to remove sex as much as possible from it, because if I was interested in them, I would get to know them a bit better. And to be honest, the whole grading thing is, like you said, if you keep it on a physical level, you don't really move past that. And, you judge yourself on your ability to sleep. If you don't have success by sleeping with them, then you look at yourself as a failure, rather than getting to know a potential friend or a contact or whatever. So what... Yeah. I think that's the biggest problem men face nowadays, is this obsession with sex, this thing of you're not a man if you're not drinking and screwing around. I definitely think that the way we sometimes, that's part of the problem. I think that part of the problem is some of the masculine things that seem to be really masculine, like fighting, sleeping around, drinking, whatever, that's not a very positive masculine archetype that we're often promoting in society. I also think on the flip of that, most guys aren't like that, and they're obviously decent individuals, and then unfortunately men often get unfairly judged. Women will not understand a man's motivations or won't connect with him as well as they could do. And I say this from working with so many female clients as well, because they have this idea that men are motivated in a very physical way. And that often massively oversimplifies what it's like to be the guy. So I think there's that issue. I also think men are often shamed around their sexuality. So it's a weird thing where we almost promote a hypersexualized culture, but then also men will feel they will worry, if I stand too close to her, am I stalking her? If I pay her a compliment, am I going to make her feel bad, and harassed? I don't want her to do that. So it's there's a real confusion over how to be, I think sexual and masculine, but in a way that's positive. And I find that most guys not wanting to be this violent, hypersexual, drunk individual probably go too far in the other direction of just being the friend, when in fact there's a different role they could take altogether. And do you think we've become worse than like our sort of grandfathers and, you know, older generations of men, or is there something about today's society that, you know, is there benefits the way we are?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think that there's like with all, I don't think we should look at the past in like a glorified way, because we just have slightly different problems. So I think historically we had clear, it definitely, at least when we speak about like the UK, Europe, and Northern America, Australia, we used to have clear agenda roles. So everyone knew what everyone's job was. We also had less sexual and relationship options. There was a much clearer route, like you met someone, you met their parents, you maybe dated or courted a little bit, but then you got married, and then you had children. And then now we have so many different forms of relationships, and because, you know, of medical advances and contraception, there's different relationship routes you can go down. Women are much more emancipated. That means that men and women, I don't think, are sure whose job it is anymore to make what move. And then also there's so much variety and choice, or perceived variety and choice, with, you know, the influx of dating apps and such, that people, I think, are losing that ability to connect in real life. And I think, you know, it's actually psychologically proven that too much choice doesn't make us happy. Like, it makes us actually less happy, because we become kind of paralyzed by not knowing what's the right road to go down. So I think we have just, whilst in the past, you know, I think especially from a woman's perspective, we were like, you know, there were really big issues with, you know, not having things like birth control and not having, we still have less rights, and far less rights than our male partners. I'm not saying that that is something that's idealistic that we should want to go back to. However, I think that what we have now is a very new and very modern set of problems that are primitive brains that really haven't changed very much in the past 40,000 years aren't best equipped to deal with.
So, say if you've got somebody listening just now and he's sitting there thinking, well, yeah, that's fine for the good-looking guys, the guys with the talent, the guys with this, the guy, you know, X, Y, Z. But they're making it out that they haven't got the money, they haven't got the looks, they haven't got the style, or whatever it is. How do you remedy that? How do you make them realise it's not about looks and it's not about their perceived place in the world, you know, that anybody can get better at social skills and dating and things like that?
Definitely. I mean, well, I think that comes twofold, right? I always think that a nice way of looking at it is great social skills give you a boost on what you've already built yourself in your life. And I think that that doesn't have to be, or it doesn't necessitate looks or social status, but I think people are really attracted to people who have got stuff going on in their lives, and sometimes that can be the easiest fix, you know. So leading a life of high value is one of the ways that you demonstrate your internal sense of confidence and self-esteem as a person. So it's like, you know, your apartment is tidy and clean, you wear clean clothes that are ironed and sort of fit, you exercise and you try most of the time, without being too self-punishing, to eat healthily, because this is just things that people who care about themselves gravitate towards doing. And believe me, I say this as someone, I've had periods in my life where I haven't done any of that. You know, I've probably been dealing with some harder emotional issues and have gone completely off the rails. So I'm not, but the good thing is, with all of that, you can pull it back around and also create and build your life where you're doing projects of value. I even find as a woman, and I would say that women are judged more in terms of physical appearance, having stuff that you've done for yourself, like the fact, you know, I've got my business, I've got stuff I'm passionate about and interested in, that's so attractive. So if you're a guy out there and you're like, where do I begin? It's like, begin. There's this whole amazing world of personal development, which is everything from fitness to exploring new career options, to designing the life that you live, to doing projects that you really care about and investing your time wisely. And then on top of that, there's a whole layer of social skills and development that you can learn that will really enrich your life, so that when you meet women, not only have you got great conversational skills or maybe just the ability to begin a conversation, but when they talk to you, you're a guy that has stuff going on in his life you're passionate and enthusiastic about, that you want to talk about. And that's not just for men. I think that's for everyone. should be leading a purposeful life. And that's not even about attracting a member of the opposite or the same sex. That's just about, that's because it's your life and it's your hours and these are your days. And so time is your most valuable asset. And so using it wisely to do things purposefully, I think is just a really smart idea.
Well, it's a superb answer, and it actually leads me on to my next question.
That's good.
My mum always used to say to me that you can't be comfortable with somebody until you're comfortable in your own skin. And, you're mentioning there about having projects that you enjoy, and, I find that I'm the strange one for wanting to run my own podcast. I was the strange one in my group of friends for wanting to start my own business and things like that. How can somebody get comfortable in their own skin, that are branching out and trying these new hobbies and building the projects they love? Is there a way that they can get used to things like social anxiety, feelings of dread, loneliness, etc.?
Yeah. I mean, first of all, I think there's a few things that I would say about this is your experience of loneliness, feelings of dread. That is the human experience. Like, I don't think there's anybody alive who has, at least not who hasn't gone through those same emotions. Like, I've had myself, personally, as a woman, as someone who's had relative degrees of success, it's just like I've had huge periods in my life of feeling really, really bleak, like super bleak. So I think identifying that that's normal is important, and accepting your feelings is important. So I think the root of lots of things comes from self-acceptance and knowing that there isn't really one perfect way of being or living, and that actually that there's some honor in just doing things, how you like to do them. Like my nan, I love how you mentioned your mum. My nan, who is one of my big inspirations, she used to love the phrase, "To thy own self be true," and I really like it as well. It means that, you don't need to do the same thing as everyone else. Like you could do what is true and what's right and what morally and everything feels good for yourself. I think also just learning that it's a process is so important, and that sometimes there's a succession of events which don't necessarily feel fair or justified, and that there's a real benefit that just comes from being tenacious. You've got to hang on in there and know that with any certainty that if things are not going well and they haven't been going well for a while, if you just keep clinging on and you keep creating change, you keep trying to change your habits and your routines, you keep putting yourself out there, things will shift. It might take time, but they will shift. And I think one of the best things that anyone can do as part of that process is to spend time by yourself. Like, actually being comfy by yourself is fantastic, as is being comfortable to walk out the door and not being so much of a hermit that you close yourself off from human interactions. So I think also not to look at other people and assume that their life is somehow brilliant and awesome and that you just got the really bad hand in life. Don't make yourself a victim. Most people, not all, but most people have their cross to bear and have gone through some stuff. So the important thing to do is to take personal responsibility for creating change, to just keep going. If you're finding it hard to keep going, reach out and ask for support, because people will want to help you. And just look around and know that even if you're looking on Facebook and everyone looks like they're having the best time ever, I can say with some certainty that they're not. And just stay focused on yourself.
Because that was another one of our many phrases, shall we say, was the ability about don't judge your own life on Facebook, because you're judging your entire life against somebody else's highlights, because they're only going to put up what's the best part of their day, or the best photos.
It's totally like, if I do a post, there's probably 20 photos that I took to get the one that looks like, that I think will look nice and stuff in my feed. And as I said, there's been so many times where I felt lonely, I felt like giving up, I felt like no one will ever love me, I'm destined to die alone. I've had all those thoughts, like many, many times. So it's good to know that everybody kind of has those moments of bleakness, and that is actually, it's okay, and we shouldn't even try to want happiness 24/7. Like, that's kind of unrealistic. In fact, something a great that I read recently was that, happiness in itself is obviously that's quite an inconsistent state. And what gives us kind of a good measure of long-term happiness is actually purpose. So not always being happy, but always trying to do things that are meaningful.
Yeah, I mean, it's like they say, if too much of one thing, is bad for you, but without up and downs, you'd be dead. It's like the heart rate on a monitor. I mean, these are sort of the things that really scare somebody who's wanting to change, but has maybe not addressed their emotional intelligence, their feelings, and really what they want from life. Can you go into a little bit about what emotional intelligence is and how somebody can develop theirs? Is it just put themselves into comfortable positions, or?
You know what? I think you shouldn't just put yourself into uncomfortable positions. Sometimes it's good to put yourself into a very comfy position. So there's times, I think, to push yourself, like when you're thinking, oh, should I go to that party, but I could just watch this TV again. That's a good time to give yourself a bit of a kick up the butt. Other times, though, you know what? If you've had something really that you found has really profoundly emotionally affected you and you're upset, if you want to go and curl up in a ball in bed for an evening, fine. There are times to kind of look after yourself and introspect as well. I find that some really valuable things to do to develop emotional intelligence. First of all, there's a couple of premises that I think are accurate, which is one, that there's always so many different ways that you can view any situation. Most of us, when we're interpreting reality, we do the spotlight effect, where we think everything is to do with us, i.e., this girl hasn't texted you back, that means that she's been, for whatever reason, deliberately toying with your emotions and leading you on and messing you around. The reality is probably that she didn't have any bad intentions towards you whatsoever. She's just, for whatever reasons, probably to do with her own life, not that invested in the conversation, is distracted by other things that are coming up as more important to her, so she's being not as good at texting you back. So stop from a position, so I'd start recognizing there's probably multiple different ways of looking at any situation. Secondly, that it's not all about you. Most people's reactions are about themselves and stuff that's going on with them, and you don't really actually have that much influence over them. I think I would teach to both my men and my women to be responsible for yourself. I think it's a really lame thing to say, oh, I only meet women that are bitches, or I only meet guys that are real bastards. Shut up is what I say to that. It's like, you choose who you spend your time with. You choose what behavior you accept. Okay, sometimes people let us down. Sometimes people are deceitful, and that's not our fault. However, I think taking responsibility is one of the best ways to feel empowered and good. It's good to hold your hand up and say, you know what, I made some stupid decisions. Or, you know what, I should have got out of that relationship sooner. Or, you know what, I shouldn't have even bothered texting that person back. That's actually positive. Because when you are in this place where you have responsibility and you're not a victim, then you have a lot of power to create change. When you put yourself in a victim mindset where stuff is just happening to you, that's what's going to make you feel rubbish. So I also suggest a good butt kick on that front. And to communicate yourself, and to start working on a very practical level, to communicate yourself clearly. A simple swap is to use less you and use more I. So instead of saying to a woman, you're ignoring me, because that might not actually be the truth, you just say, look, I just noticed I've noticed you've been a bit quieter recently. That makes me feel like there's something's going on, and I wanted to check in with you and see what's up. That's actually a fairer and clearer way of communicating things. So instead of just assuming that someone is being away, that someone's ignoring you or is being cold or that they don't like you, that's just a big lot of assumptions that you've made, probably based around your insecurities, which may or may not be being triggered by whoever you're engaging with. But you don't really get very far by accusing people of things. You get far by acknowledging what you want, communicating it clearly, and then seeing if the other person responds. And does not respond, then you know that that's a good relationship to let go of.
Sorry, I think we broke up there a wee bit. I really liked that tip about actually saying how you feel rather than, saying you did this, you did that, taking the accusation away and just saying, from my point of view, that's how I feel.
I think I think a great little system for this is just being okay. So what you do is okay, let's break this down. Someone is responding to you less. Let's just take that as a good example. Now, instead of just assuming and starting to build up a story in your brain that means that they don't like you or they're ignoring you, they met another guy, you just don't know. Go to what you know. What do you know? Start with that. You know that the volume of text messages has gone down. That's an objective fact, right? That's a good place to start. Then you want to look to yourself and go, okay, that's the fact. How is that making me feel? And that could be making you feel ignored or neglected, or that the person isn't attracted to you or annoyed. And those feelings are your feelings. They're not that person. That's how you are feeling. So choose that. Then, because you recognize your feelings, I'll think, okay, what do I need to feel comfier and happier with this person? Then communicate that by saying I need, I think, I feel, I want, I believe. And then ask them in a very pragmatic way to create some change. So that could be, state what you want. Say, I'd like to chat to you more often, or for me, when I'm dating someone, I want to see them at least once a week. You're allowed to say that. That's your worldview, and that's what you desire in relationships. Now, the key here is when you've ticked all those boxes and you've been very self-aware and you haven't created stories, you've made it clearly, then look how they respond. Any person who's good to have in your life will listen to you. They might not totally agree, but they will communicate what their position is, and they will keep talking to you. It's like a negotiation. People that are kind of I'm going to avoid is a strong word. Probably people that are not so great for you to partner up with, or probably not so ready for a relationship, or you don't have that level of connection, are people who ignore your needs, who just straight up dismiss your feelings, who don't adjust their behavior, who maybe don't have the emotional intelligence themselves to explain what they're thinking. So I think that's just what you're in it's a great test of a relationship or a situation is can you communicate? And if so, does the person listen to you, and do they respect what you're communicating?
So is there a way that somebody could notice that without getting too attached to that person, or is that something you really have to deal with by just how they react more than a couple of occurrences, or is it a method that you could maybe use in an approach to a girl to see if she's even remotely interested? Is there indicators of interest?
Definitely. I would say it depends what your goals are to begin with. First of all, let's start with the guys that are listening. Just think what your goals are. Do you want to have brief, casual sexual relationships, casual, ongoing relationships, or proper, full intimacy relationships? Because that will affect what qualities you look out for in a person. If you want something super casual and brief, you want to, when you meet people, they're demonstrating to me that they're showing strong signs of spontaneity. Are they showing me that they are super happy for me to are they showing that they're really open to adventures? Are they very talkative? Are they outgoing? Do they seem willing to spend more time with me right now? If you're looking for someone in more of a relationship capacity, and these two things, by the way, aren't mutually exclusive. You could want both, and people can be both. That you'd want to think, well, if for instance a girl can't, say you're speaking to a woman, you want a relationship with her, and she keeps cancelling or keeps rearranging, or is just can't keep a commitment, and then can't say truthfully why she can't keep that commitment. That is immediately telling you that person is not, for reasons probably completely not to do with you, that they are not giving you the indicators that they're ready to have a relationship. They're just, so you're just looking can this person, and it's nothing to do with me, is this person at this time in their life able to give me the kind of relationship I'm looking for? If you want something casual and this person is, you know, wary and they're not interested in that, just leave it. Go find someone else. If you really want a relationship and they're being very evasive and they can't keep a commitment, leave it. Find someone else, because you need people that are going to turn up on the same level as you as the bare minimum.
And is that the same sort of thing as somebody saying, oh, I'm worried about the age difference, I'm worried about what my parents will think? Is excuses like that just excuses, or is that something that, you know, you could work around?
Yeah, but I would say that the workaround is going to come from the person that's making the excuse. Because some things, I think, you know, we all have different upbringings and different value systems, and so certain things like parental approval are more important to some people than they are to others by like a big difference. I think often that if we start looking for reasons why we can't be with someone, that's usually a pretty good indicator that there's something inherently about the relationship that is making that person feel discomfort. And that discomfort needs a reason. Often it's just a feeling, right? You just don't feel comfortable. And that feeling of not feeling comfortable has to have a reason, a rational thing attached to it. So that could be, I don't think my parents would like them, for instance, or, you know, my parents will have a different view of the partner that I want. Now, a lot of the time, that could be because the person isn't making the other person feel comfy, and there's something about the relationship that's not right. Or a lot of the time, it could just be that the person who's having all these excuses just doesn't feel comfy with intimacy, just not ready for whatever reason, and they look for reasons why. Sometimes I think that people who are, you know, least open to intimacy can be very critical, very rigid, very perfectionist, very unwilling to compromise. And if that is the case, then this person, again, it's one of these ways that they're strongly communicating they are not a great person to turn up in a relationship, because they probably have some work they want to do on themselves first. Because, you know what, even if your parents might disapprove a bit, if you really want to be with a person, you're invested in working on the relationship, you would at least attempt to create communication. You at least attempt to, you know, speak to your parents and check their value systems, or introduce parents to the boyfriend, and see if you can do everything to facilitate them getting along. So if you're just holding your hands up and saying, I don't think this is going to work for these reasons that I seem to have pulled out of thin air, then I would say that's indicative of someone who might have a problem with just intimacy generally. And then it's our job, if you're on the receiving end of it, as someone who's full of excuses. Now, I've had this, definitely have had this in my own personal life. Just, you know, the best thing you can do there is to just step outside of the system and just acknowledge to yourself this person's not ready to give you what you might want, and your effort's going to be better invested looking after yourself, healing yourself, and then going to meet other people.
See, this is why I always liked your material. It's like you're actually speaking directly to me, because I'm actually going through this right now with somebody who's very much the, you know, oh, you're too old for me, do you not think I'm too young for you, sort of thing. And I think a lot of us need that, you know, like a kick in the butt to say, look, it's not you, it's stop taking it personally, it's maybe just where that person is in their life.
It is, and then sometimes also it can be very difficult when you're in that scenario. I've really been there. You want to prove to that person, you want to be like, you know, you want to show that you're good enough for them, and you start doing these actions to kind of cling on to things, and that's usually coming from a deep insecurity. So I think there's a lot of time where actually there's a real benefit. It's like in, you know, graciously. And it can be really difficult, graciously at least beginning the process of letting something go. If that person is showing clearly through their actions, I don't look to what their reasons are. I look to people's actions, because people can make up all kinds of creative reasons why they do things. And very few people want to admit that maybe they're doing something that's not positive for another person. So because of that, purely because of that, what I would do is, you know, I would be just thinking, okay, this person isn't showing up like they can give me what I want. So the best thing I can do for myself, because I know that I really want a relationship, is to try and detach myself from this person versus trying to convince them of something that maybe they can't be convinced of right now.
So what would you recommend to people who are wanting to improve themselves? You know, maybe they've realised that the person they're after isn't right for them. You know, should they go away and start going to the gym and exercising, meditating, mindfulness? Should they be looking at their diet? You know, is there a kind of standard protocol that you set your clients on to start fixing themselves internally before they look at going?
Yeah, for me personally, I'm a big believer in like getting the groundwork in place. So usually when I'm working, and when I work with clients, it's very rare I actually work with people one-to-one nowadays. I actually have pretty awesome online and offline training programs, both for men and women. So it's really, we've got a cool community here of people that have the same values. I would say also, you know, that if you're just kind of getting out of something, or you've been listening to this podcast and you're thinking, oh, geez, I actually need to cut that off. I think that there's a real myth there, which is the best thing you can do is just go right back out there. You know, the best way to get over someone is to get under someone else, or whatever that phrase is. I actually don't think that's true. I think that the best thing that you can do is first of all realize that, you know, it's not all about you, that is probably just how that person is, and to try and be kind of peaceful with them. To then start, you know, first of all, you know, if the relationship has dissolved, to not keep in a 50-50 relationship. I would think it's better just to know what you want. So if you want to say you want a proper relationship and you want to see this person 3 times a week, and you want, you know, them to update their Facebook status to say they're your girlfriend, like, know that that's what you want. Then articulate it, say what you want to that person. Now, if that person isn't able to give you what you want, then it's natural and healthy for you to take a step back. Now, by taking a step back and actually lessening or completely, preferentially cutting contact, it's only going to go one of 2 ways. Either A, the person in their own space and own time, without your intervention, does the work on themselves that is required in order for them to come back into your life and be a better partner, or B, you move on more quickly. So I always just think, like, prioritize. It's hard, but prioritize your long-term goals and be honest with yourself about what you want. Don't settle for a relationship that gives you 50% of what you want. You know, and there's many forms of relationships and people that are out there that can really fulfill you emotionally and physically. So don't settle. Then I would go definitely for a period of self-improvement. Like, my friends literally have a joke about me. I've like developed all these weird like pastimes I love. Like, I'm like really into Latin dance. I speak Portuguese, and I usually picked up these hobbies as a direct result of just breaking up with someone and wanting to put my energy into something else. And it's something really amazing about, you know, eating healthy food, don't party too much, sleep, get a good night's sleep, meditate, have times where your phone is just switched off, you know, taking up something new. That is so good for your self-esteem and so good for the soul. And then just keep doing that. Focus on building good friendships with people, trying new things, travel. And then eventually you'll find that you are, A, not pining after the original person, and B, without even having to put yourself out there in the dating scene, you will just be meeting people.
So let's take an example of, say somebody's moved to a new city, they've just broken up with a long-term partner. You know, how would they start going about this? How would they start making the friends and going for that life of adventure? Is it just spend that self-improvement time, then look to go out, or should they be, you know, baby steps? Is there like micro challenges that you can
I mean, I think one of the best, I like usually work on like principles. So I think principle 1, say yes. You know, it will always feel a bit uncomfortable when you're doing something new. Like, I found I've been doing a digital nomad thing where I've been trying to live in different countries around the world to like check it out, see if I'm see if I'm happier or more content elsewhere. And I've really noticed that when I'm not in the UK, I was saying yes to a lot more invitations if people wanted, because I was thinking, oh wow, I actually need to build a social circle here. So not prejudging things and not going, oh, I don't like Latin dance nights, or, oh, I don't like bars. You know, don't be too rigid. Just say yes. If it sucks when you go, you know, go for 20 minutes. If you don't like it, you can go home. But I think there's a real benefit in physically leaving the house. I also think, though, that has to be balanced by not being too frantic about it. So I think every one of us needs at least one night, if not 2 nights a week, where we're just at home, making sure we get a really good night's sleep. The TV is off. We're doing something a bit more mindful, like cooking or meditating or reading or, drawing or writing, doing something that is, lo-fi. So using little technology that, gives us time to have introspection and really get clear on what we want. I think that's really valuable. I also think, as a little tip, whenever you're meeting new people, whether that's in like a social interaction or dating context, one of the things I love to do when I meet a stranger is I say something within the first couple of minutes of conversation about my day or my week that's very candid, because my aim is to create a permission in the conversation and create more intimacy, where by the fact I have self-disclosed something that's a bit more, because I've self-disclosed something that's a bit more, vulnerable about myself, it gives someone something to connect to. So, for instance, I don't know why I keep going on about this, but it's true. Like while I was away in America, to go back to that story to complete the loop, I rented my apartment out on Airbnb and it got trashed. Like, people literally trashed my house. It was so bad. So one of the things I did in a positive tone of voice is when I met someone new and they're like, "How's your week been?" I'll be like, "To be honest, it's been a bit crazy. Like, I was in the States last week doing some work, and I've come back to the UK and my apartment had been trashed by the Airbnb people. Damn them!" So I've had it's been a funny one. I've had lots of kind of stuff to deal with on top of my normal day. So I would go right in. I would just be completely honest and upfront and give quite a detailed little story about what happened in my week. And I know that the guys or women, if there's any women out there listening to this, might think, "Oh, that's quite self-indulgent." But actually, it's not about you boasting or being self-centered. What you're doing by being that open and talking in that detailed way about yourself is you give other people the ability to get a snapshot of your character, and you also create what I call a permission in the conversation, which means it's almost like you're now allowed to talk at that level of intimacy and depth with a person.
Yeah, because that's what I was just going to say, was you're allowing the permission to move from the superficial BS conversation that most people would have to actually talking to them like a person and on a more personal level. And is this the problem we have nowadays with guys utilizing phones and online dating and talking through social media? Have we forgotten how to just speak like normal people?
Yeah, I think we all, I think particularly also British culture, which can be very privacy driven, we really value personal space and privacy, and if someone's crying, we kind of leave them to cry and don't want to embarrass them. So embarrassment, shame, privacy, these are kind of cultural ideals which don't help us either. We're not the most tactile and open of cultures. And then added on to that, people hide behind their mobile phones. And you know what? It's really sad that sometimes, if you don't want to speak to anyone anymore, you just stop responding to them on their phone, you block them on, and you just disappear. And I think sometimes we lack some integrity because of that. And but the good solution that people can do is that you want to uphold the values that you believe in. So you know what? If you're a fan of meeting people in real life, go out and meet people in real life. If you go to hayleyquinn.com/approach for the guys there, I've got a free cheat sheet on, how to say hi. So there's so much information about how you can actually go out and say hello to people. Then, if you say hello to a person, you get to know them a bit and you just don't feel that it's working out or you don't want to know them anymore, be gracious and just give them an explanation. Don't just disappear. I think that we can all do a lot to improve how much we're communicating and our levels of personal integrity with it.
And one of the things that sort of stood out a lot was you describe yourself as sort of bi-curious, or sort of bisexual, sorry. How is your activities, like in the Skirt Club and coaching women and that, how's that sort of shaped, your coaching for guys, and what advice would you give, like, say, a guy who's listening, who's bi-curious, or a gay guy who's listening? Are the skills that you offer on your courses, etc., is that suitable for somebody, like a guy chasing a guy?
Totally. I mean, I would say about myself, here's an interesting thing. For anybody who's curious, I mean, I actually pretty much would say I'm heterosexual now. Pretty much. Like, I don't, I've gone, my feelings about my sexual orientation have shifted around a lot. I think because of my interaction with the pickup industry, I had a really and I think also it's pretty normal for people in their like 20s, like a period of like wild experimentation. But that's not really like, you know, I've kind of like thought about it, tried it out, and I've kind of now I'm at a position of feeling like heterosexual and into monogamy. So the thing is, you can do something and you can try, and that doesn't have to define who you are for the rest of your life. That could just be a period of your life that you're in. It could just be something you do. So I don't think, for instance, if a guy kisses another guy, really controversial for a podcast, like, who usually identifies as straight, that does not mean you're gay. It doesn't mean you're bi. It just means you kissed a guy. Like, who cares? Like, then you see how you feel after that. So I think being open to the fact that at different periods in our lives, we might want to be more straight or more gay, or we might want monogamy more or less. That's pretty normal, I think. I also think that, like, my techniques I've developed, I mean, my female clients are both my male and my female client base are largely heterosexual. However, I've actually got some YouTube videos coming out next month where I'm working with a gay guy and a gay woman for them to use my techniques to approach people, just because I want to show that it's about people and how humans interact and those social skills versus it always having to be one way around. Like, it always has to be a guy approaching a girl. You know, I think it's fine for women to learn in their own way how to begin or initiate conversations with men. Like, I think that's actually really fun. I also like, you know, so I like to show that this is about what we're really talking about here isn't men versus women or straight versus anything else. It's literally, this is just about people. How do people relate to one another? How can I improve my social skills? And I find that even if you're the most red-blooded heterosexual guy in the world that's listening to this podcast, that is honestly, it's a good way of looking at it, because when you move away from it being, oh, she's a hot babe, she's an HB9 or whatever, and you go, oh, she's a person, I'll just talk to her like that. It really reduces approach anxiety. It means you connect with people better. Your social skills are cooler. So that's what I would be focusing on.
Something that, like, I would identify myself as straight, but for girls, you know, it's the cool thing nowadays to see, you know, to say they're bisexual, or to, you know, the Katy Perry song, I Kissed a Girl, and I actually started getting emails from some guys who are saying, I'm not sure, how do I deal with this is wrong, or, you know, and I was just thinking, it's a horrible situation we've developed where a guy can't go for what makes them happy because they're worried about how society
totally.
them.
It's so weird that we've kind of like gone, like, with men it's still so quote unquote shameful, and for women it's like almost like a prize. But then I also hear weird stories about women wanting to be like, give their boyfriend the first threesome, and that's all. I was going to swear, then I won't, because you're probably really messed up as well. So again, like, I go back to what my nan said, to thy own self be true, you know, just, you got to, like, actually the more that you focus on doing you versus, like, that sounds really sexual, I didn't mean it that way, versus what works for everybody else, it's good. Like, that's why I even like it. You know, instead of thinking, oh, shall I send them this message? Oh, they might be put off me, and getting really lost in worrying what someone else is going to think of you. I just think, what do I want to say? What am I thinking? What will make me good to communicate and live that?
For somebody listening just now, what do you want them to take away from this? Because you've given some amazing content, and I'll fill it up with lots of your videos and links.
Yeah, and I'll give them a link as well. I'll give you a link to these free cheat sheets so that people can get mini ebooks and stuff for me, for, you know, so your listeners can check that out. I mean, I would say, like, most important stuff. One, don't judge yourself. You know, accept however you feel about a situation. Accept that you want what you want, and that might not be what everybody else wants, and that is okay. Secondly, know that if there's something you're not happy with, by and large, you can change. Like, you can really create change. Point three, sometimes that change takes time. It's not that, unfortunately, the universe hasn't implemented an instantaneous reward system for good behavior. But, but gradually doing things in the right way will help. And you definitely can learn this stuff. Like everything, whether it's like a more positive mindset. Sometimes you don't even have a positive mindset. Sometimes it's about just keeping going and surviving. Sometimes it's about, how do I approach a woman in a coffee shop when she's got her headphones in? Sometimes it's like, how do I tell her that that straight off the bat that I'm not looking for anything serious? Sometimes it's like, how do I express my feelings better so I have more rewarding friendships with people? Like all these questions that can really eat away at you. Honestly, honest to God, there is a solution in there. And the solution will be in your mindset, but it'll also be in skills that you can learn and develop. And that's a wonderful thing that you can participate in. So if you're a guy that's been listening to this, you're interested in checking out my staff approach, there's a free cheat sheets there for you. I'm on Instagram as @HayleyQuinnX. I have to point out, because I think of all of the platforms, that's the one that I'm the most talkative. So if you wildly agreed or disagreed with everything I have to say, I'd love to hear from you. Comment on some of my pictures and we'll chat. And I just think if you're listening to this podcast as well done, because you're always showing that level of engagement and self-awareness and willingness to change, and that is the most powerful thing.
That's a fantastic, sort of summary. I really cannot thank you enough for taking the time. I know we sort of bounced around some topics, but I have so many questions. I would definitely love to have you on again at some point. The floor is open to you. If there's any products, any upcoming like web seminars or events that you maybe want to promote, any products that are coming up?
Yeah, what I would say is I run this amazing course called Academy. I'm speaking for guys. I have ones for women as well, but I think you said that most of your listeners are guys. If you go to HayleyQuinn.com, week on and offline programs, so you can choose the online version. So if you live maybe, in Scotland far away, that's a really good one to participate in. We do what it's based around is some principles that I really believe in. It's over 12 weeks so that you create positive habits and you change. It's about all the training is adjusted to personality style. So at the beginning of the course, we do a few little questionnaires and things, and we work out what training you need as a person. So it's not one size fits all. We also give loads of support. So I've got an ongoing WhatsApp group that's part of that, which I'm on every single day, so that we build a community, because I think it's not about one big action. Like that's why I don't really go in for like boot camps. I don't really believe in them. It's about, a bunch of little actions very consistently that really builds help. And Academy is 12 weeks of online coursework, 12 weeks of video modules, 12 weeks of webinars delivered by myself and other industry experts, 12 weeks of 24/7 WhatsApp support with me, 12 weeks of challenges to change your life. So if you're a guy out there, I would really advise checking that out. And as I said, if you want some free information from me, if you go to HayleyQuinn.com/approach, that will give you some free PDFs and ebook kind of stuff that you can start to work with.
And it just broke up when you were giving the address for the Academy. Was it /
Yeah,
Academy?
that's it. HayleyQuinn.com, which is HayleyQuinn.com/Academy.
Perfect. Because that Academy is something I'll definitely promote. It sounds absolutely ideal for a lot of
I will shoot you an email about it, because it's like, we're looking for people that believe in it, and we've got honestly some of the testimonials and the things that happen with this group of recruits, because my goal is actually that the guys that go through Academy, they learn enough they can then go on and teach other guys. We start to build out a really strong, amazing, supportive community, which is showing men that there is this third way where they can, where they're not the creepy guy, or they're not just like the super nice friend, but there's a form of masculinity that women really want to have in the world. So we try and promote great values, things being super ethical, but also lots of learning, lots of development, and lots of just being clearer about yourself.
That's it for another week. Thanks for listening. Absorb it, practice it, use it. Until next time, keep trying to hit that next level in your life.